This is going to be a really fun video for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't know who's going to play finals, and that's obviously the theme of this video. And I'll also be doing my tips for the next 2 weeks as it stands right now to see who I believe is going to make finals and whether I actually agree analytically to what I think instinctually. So I hope you enjoy, but seriously, does anyone want to play finals in that bottom part of the 8? Because seriously, some of you are playing some football like you don't want to, and that needs to be talked about. Let's go through all the teams that are in a hunt for a top 8 spot, talk about their last 2 games, and go from there. Hope you enjoy. Let's find out who's going to play finals in 2023. Let's go. And just before we get started, there has been a massive influx of new subscribers on the channel, so if you have just recently joined, a massive thank you for coming on board the Daz Talks Footy channel. And if you're watching this and you haven't clicked that subscribe button, why don't you go ahead and do that? But if you already have clicked it, why don't you click that bell? That will let you know when a new video has been uploaded and you're going to be able to enjoy just a little bit more Daz Talks Footy as we come into what is going to be an absolutely bonkers final series. So go ahead and do those things. And if you play US fantasy sport, if you're an NFL or an NBA fan and you want to join me and other Daz Talks Footy subscribers, there is going to be information in the description box down below, or you can find it at the end of this video on how you can join a NFL I should say, and an NBA league, whether you want to join one or both, that is completely up to you, but once the spots are gone, they are gone, and you can get into it. More info will be provided the closer we get to the draft dates, but get your spot in early now, and we are going to have a ton of fun. But let's get to the actual video, guys. I'm going to talk about the 6 clubs that have got a chance, I think, to make the 8 at the end of the year. Now, the top 4 are set. They're definitely playing finals, that being, of course, Collingwood, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, and Melbourne. And I hate to jinx you, Carlton fans, but I'm putting you in the lock category, considering that you are a game and a half ahead of 8th at this point. Well, yes, that does extend to teams outside of the top 8 as well. Given the machinations of the fixture, it is extremely unlikely that even if you lose both games, that there are going to be enough teams to knock you out of that 8th spot. And if Carlton do manage to not make finals this year, I'll be more than happy to make a 20-25 minute video and just shit on them. But I'm putting Carlton in the lock, so we're not talking about the Blues in this video, the most informed team in the competition. The rest of them, though, who knows? So let's go in ladder order from 6th to 11th. Let's talk about them, beginning with 6th placed St Kilda. Probably the most likely to miss out for mine. They were awesome against the Tigers. I'm not taking anything away from that round 22 performance. They were fantastic. They put the game away against the Hawks a few weeks ago as well, with a dominant first quarter, 9 goals to 2 in that one. However, Geelong and Brisbane are 2 teams that I can see are better than the Saints at the moment. I know the Cats on the scoreboard aren't exactly looking like beaters, considering that the Saints are higher than them on the ladder, but I am struggling with the authenticity of St Kilda's game style at the moment. The Cats played really good footy against the Pies and ended up a goal and a half short. Now, if the Saints do win against the Cats, they're making it, and I will happily put my hand up and say I was wrong on the Saints, but I definitely don't think they're beating Brisbane. I think it's going to be a fortnight of pain for the Saints, unfortunately. Now, again, I would love to be proven wrong here because St Kilda fans deserve some hope. They absolutely do. It's not coming from me yet, but this time next week, if the Saints have beaten the Cats, I'll put my hand up, say I was wrong, we'll move on. But at the moment, I can't see them beating Geelong maybe 3 times out of 10. I know you only have to do it once. And I can only see them winning 1 out of every 10 times they play Brisbane at the Gabba. And that's probably being generous. I honestly think the Saints are going to miss out, which is unfortunate for Saints fans. They'll have spent something like 38 weeks in the top 8 in the last 2 seasons and could potentially miss out on finals for both. And if that's not heartbreaking to Saints fans, I don't know what is in a post-2010 world. Swans are flying and get two really good tests in the run home. The Crows, they'll be mentioned in this video as well, but they're going to be wanting to win that game. It is at home for the Crows, I do believe, which is going to be really tough for the Swans. They, 50-50 chance there. And then that game against Melbourne, I can definitely see Sydney going 0-2 here. I could also see them going 2-0. In reality, it probably is 1-1. But it could be losing to the Crows and then beating Melbourne. This is the most tantalising for me for the Swans. Analytically, they are the hardest club to look at, considering they are on a really good patch of form. All of their youngsters and their veterans are playing really well at the same time. And nearly, you'd almost rather Sydney have Collingwood and say Port Adelaide in that run home. But considering we've got two teams that you could flip a coin against, even if you're the underdog twice, we've seen plenty of underdogs get up in recent weeks. Hey, I'm a Hawthorn fan. I've really enjoyed the last fortnight. But seeing the Swans lock themselves into a final spot right here, right now, is impossible to say. And look, the ladder predictor is going to be an interesting one for mine. They're 50-50 in both, probably favoured towards the Adelaide game. But Adelaide have been really good at home. How the hell do you predict this? But for the Swans, they've been awesome. It really would be a wasted year to give up what's potentially going to be a really, really good draft pick to then not make the 8. Now, you shouldn't tank for draft picks, I understand that. But coming off a grand final loss, you would have hoped for a better return than this. Yes, they don't have to go on a dynasty run. No one really does after a grand final loss, unless you're the Hawks of 2013. 14-15 after that 2012 disaster, ironically, against the Swans. But it's not something that happens a lot. Usually the grand final loss is either at the end of a dynasty, circa Brisbane, 1-2-3, losing in 04, of course, or it's in the middle that might kickstart another run. You think of Geelong, who won 07, 9, 11, but lost in 08. Or you even think of the Tigers, if you want to extend this to prelim finals, 17, awesome, lost in 18, 19, 20. How can you pick it for the Swans? I can see them making it. I can see them missing out. And that's kind of what makes the end of this season so fascinating. I think if they get in, they're going to finish 8th. I will say that. But hey, I'm going to have to find out when I do the ladder predictor, which I haven't done before recording this video. I'm looking forward to that. And fingers crossed you stick around for that as well. But the Swans are going beautifully. Let's hope, for their sake, it's not a waste. Bulldogs are going to beat West Coast. It's probably going to be enough to make the finals, but this feels like another wasted year for a wasted list, and I really don't know where the Bulldogs are at. If we were just looking at the talent that is on field, the Bulldogs are a top 4 team every day of the week. Yes, they've got some holes. Every team's got list holes. I do think the Bulldogs, when it comes to talking about their talent, actually get their flaws exposed more by some people than others, but I don't know what Bevo's doing. I don't know why Bevo's getting out-coached by significantly less experienced coaches than he is. I don't know if I have a lot of faith in Bevo moving forward. He's got a captain at the moment who is probably going to win a Brownlow medal. Libba is probably going to make All-Australian. Bailey Dale, Caleb Daniel have been All-Australians before. Norton and Ugle-Hagan are working well. I know Waitman was well held on the weekend, but he is a potential match winner, and they've got guys around the fringes that are really good as well. I really like what I've seen from James O'Donnell. They've drafted Jed Buslinger and Charlie Clark in the last couple of years. Ironically, the Bulldogs have got it right off the field and on paper, but on field, compared to what they should be, are an unmitigated disaster. But they'll smack the Eagles, probably. I think they might beat Geelong. Whether they do or they don't, I still think they're going to make it, but it might be a percentage problem. But they're not making a prelim final, I don't think. They're not making a grand final from here, the Bulldogs. So what are they actually doing? How long do you stick with the current system? Yes, Rowan Smith is gone, and they're apparently going to rejig a coaching system and keep Bevo in charge, but you don't really have that long left with a group that is going to be this tight-knit without frustration seeping through. So the Dogs could make it. They might even surprise us and win a final. Is it enough? Probably not, given their talent. Bombers, shit percentage, and considering that they played West Coast and North Melbourne in the last fortnight, is probably not going to be enough. I can see them getting over the Giants if it was in Melbourne, but it isn't, and I can't see them beating the Pies. 1-1 is probably best case scenario for the Dons. I can't really see them going 2-0 the way that they're playing, but isn't it funny how people aren't kicking up a storm as much about the fixture, considering they didn't smack West Coast and North in their second games? It's almost as if who you play doesn't matter, but how you play. Who would have thought? Well, fuck me swinging. Who would have thought it's about how you play and not who you play? Anyone with common sense, I'd have argued, but hey, we need clickbait, so there you go. Hard to see the Bombers making it. Even if they win both, I still think percentage is going to be a massive problem, and GWS can end their year next week anyway, and then they can try to kick Collingwood potentially out of top spot if that's the way that the cookie crumbles. But for the Bombers, it's been a great year, don't get me wrong. Good bit of building. Love what Brad Scott's been able to do for the Bombers defensively, and love the fact they're going to get another pretty good draft pick in order to get another youngster through the door. How bloody good has Elijah Sardis looked? Bombers fans getting excited about that in a big, big way. Mason Redmond's just signed. We'll see what happens with Darcy Parish, but I can't see the Bombers making it. The Giants, well, that Essendon GWS game is probably the most important of all the games next week, to be perfectly honest, but I can see the Giants winning that at home, and then that last game against the Blues is going to dictate a fair few things, I believe. But I think on current form and the way that we've got to look at how teams match up, I think they beat the Bombers and they lose to the Blues, and it would be really interesting if that is enough to get them in. Personally, I struggle to see it going that way, but Adam Kingsley, if they do make finals, is the coach of the year. I know Voss has done a great job in the last couple of months. I know Craig McRae sustaining this level of excellence is great. I know Ken Hinkley's job was on the line and he's gotten them to a top 4. I understand all that. They're really strong arguments that you can't really complain about. But Adam Kingsley, the man who got the job without a whole lot of fanfare, turned a almost bottom 4 lock into a finals contender. It's a hell of a lot of improvement. And considering we live in a world where Alistair Clarkson's never won Coach of the Year, I don't really see why Craig McRae gets it for finishing on top of the ladder and potentially having the best team. So, there you go. GWS Essendon, I have the Giants winning that game, which gives them a chance, and then it all comes down to that Blues game, but they've been fantastic. And finally, the Cats. I can actually see the Cats winning both of these games in the run home. Now, what that means for them in terms of the machinations of the other players is something I'll touch on in a minute when we get to the ladder predictor, but my goodness me, I'm looking forward to this in a big, big way. If the Cats do make it, which was helped significantly by the Bulldogs losing to the Hawks yesterday, I'm not sure how much damage they can do. I don't think they're anywhere near as a finals contender as they were last year. I don't see them as that side that everyone should be afraid of. How much the reigning premiers tag might affect other teams psychologically, I'm not really sure. Port Adelaide stuck it to them at GMHBA Stadium. I don't think the Pies are afraid of them at all after that qualifying final win. They've gone 2-0 in, admittedly, probably 2 of the 5 or 6 best games of 2023. Both high scoring. If we could even get that in the final, would be simply extraordinary. I think they would beat someone like the Bulldogs in a final if they could, because again, I'm not a big buyer of the Bulldogs. If they play any of the other teams mentioned in this block, I think they win that final. They might get over the Demons. They're not beating Brisbane at the Gabba. They're not beating the Pies, I don't think. And dependent on where that Port Adelaide final is, I might even go for the Power as well in that case. Could they beat the Blues in an elimination final? Of course, we don't know where the Blues are at psychologically when it comes to finals. But I don't think the Cats are getting to a prelim. Or if they do, magically, they're not getting further than that. So here's the fun bit. Let's get to the ladder predictor. Can't wait for this. So Collingwood, Brisbane, I've got the Pies just. Richmond beat North. Gold Coast, Carlton, I think Carlton get up in that one. GWS Essendon, I've said the Giants will get up in that one. St Kilda, Geelong, I can see the Cats getting up. Adelaide, Sydney, it's a real flip of the coin, this one. I think Adelaide's record at home would get it done just. Bulldogs smack West Coast. Melbourne beat Hawthorn. That could be wrong. I haven't picked the Hawks for the last 2 weeks, and that's worked out pretty well for me. I think Port get the job done over Freo, who didn't have a whole lot of competition last week. Collingwood beat the Bombers. For sure, I think the Hawks get up over the Dockers. North Melbourne, Gold Coast, I'd like to think that North could get one more win on the run home, maybe end their year on a high, so I might actually go an upset there. Brisbane, St Kilda, Brisbane for mine. Geelong, Western Bulldogs. Oh, gross. I think Geelong maybe. West Coast, Adelaide. Adelaide get the job done there. Port Adelaide beat Richmond. Sydney, Melbourne, I did say that I'd pick Sydney to go 1-1, so if I go Sydney there. Carlton get over the Giants, and that's where it's at. Holy Moses. Collingwood, Port, Brisbane, Melbourne. Carlton, Geelong, Sydney, Adelaide, and the Bulldogs miss out on percentage. Wowee. Okay, interesting. Let's see how that goes. What do you guys think? Comment below. Let me know. I'm looking forward to seeing how the end of this season shapes up. Fingers crossed you had a good weekend. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to Daz Talks Footy. And if you want to join the NBA or NFL sleeper competitions, you are going to need the sleeper app. You can find them in the description down below. Once the spots are gone, they're gone, guys. I'm not going to be doing multiple leagues or anything like that, so fingers crossed you can get involved ASAP. Have a fantastic start to your week. I'll see you again on Wednesday night. Goodbye.